Hello and welcome back to another episode of TWIG. And this week there's been some more changes to hyper races. There's a new map, there's some new power-ups, there's some new engines. Yeah, it's very exciting. Let's get into the video. So as always, I'll start off by putting the changelogs for this week's update on the screen now, so you can pause the video and read them if you want. And the new items in the shop this week are the epic GG title, the legendary red ship core, the legendary angelic warrior avatar, the rare foxtail avatar, the rare snow foxtail avatar, and the epic puppy girl evo avatar. In the Chronos shop, the lime strider dropship has replaced the orange starship dropship, and there's been no changes in the hyper racers shop. So in last week's video, I did a giveaway for the Season 3 Battle Pass, and all you had to do was just comment what your favourite part of Season 3 was to be entered, and the winner was Surreal 4. I've given them the Battle Pass, and I think that their comment to enter, in it they made a really good point about how well balanced Hyper Racers is, because and that's what makes the game really fun. Because even if you're really far behind and it seems like you can't get into first, like with all the power-ups and stuff, it is still possible to get back into first, and that's what makes the game really fun and exciting. The Surreal 4 was the winner of the giveaway. So you might remember that a few weeks ago, Galaxite announced a Core Wars map contest where you could basically build a map for Core Wars, and some winners would be picked to be added into the game. Well, the winners have been announced. The winning maps are called Olympus, Sakura, and Runestar's Breach. The maps look really cool, and you can tell that the people who built them have put a lot of effort into them, so it'll be really exciting when the maps are actually added into the game. It'll be really fun playing on these maps. So before I talk about some of the changes that have happened to Hyper Racers and Chronos this week, I'm going to quickly mention something that was right at the start of the changelogs this week, and that is that on the weekend from the 19th to the 22nd, that's a couple of weeks time, there's going to be a limited time mode for Chronos solos. I'm really excited and intrigued because I don't know what it could be, but the limited time mode sounds quite exciting. I can't wait to play it. I don't know what it could be. Let me know in the comments what you think the limited time mode could be. It's probably going to be pretty exciting, but I have no clue what it could be. So the first change in Hyper Racers this week is that there's a new map. It's called Golden Plaza, and the background footage you're watching at the moment is from the new map, Golden Plaza. I think the thing that is most interesting about it is that since it's a slightly smaller map than the other Hyper Racers maps, there's 4 laps per race rather than the normal 3. It's just sort of a bit different. I think the map is really cool, like all the other maps. There's also one other map that has slightly changed, except the actual map hasn't changed, it's just the name. It was called Sunset Zocalo or Zocalo. I honestly don't know how to pronounce it, but it's been changed to Sunset Temple. I'm not entirely sure why they've changed it, but it might be to do with the fact that I have no idea how to pronounce the old name. So the next change in Hyper Racers, I think it's a really big and really good change. Because in last week's episode of TWIG, I said that there's multiple different ways you can play Hyper Racers that are really fun. You can either sort of play against your friends in sort of a fun competition to try and get in first place, but you can also just try and beat your own times and in a competition against yourself, to see how fast a time you can get on each of the different maps. And the change is sort of to do with that, and that's part of what I think is the most fun part of Hyper Racers. The change is that it now sort of keeps track of your fastest times on each of the different maps in your stats. It also keeps track of a world record. The fastest time that anyone has ever got on each of the different maps, and it'll say that in the chat before each race. And it's sort of fun to see how fast you can get and how close to the world record you can get, or even if you can beat the world record. But even just beating your own personal best, that's just like really exciting. And yeah, I think that this change is sort of really good, and it sort of incentivizes going for your own, like going to try and beat your own times, and that's one of the most fun parts of hyper races. But just to let you know, it doesn't actually keep track of any times from before this week's update. But I think that's because there's been some changes with how some of the engines work, so you can't beat some times that were from before the update. But I'll mention that a bit later. So there's also been a bunch of new power-ups added. The first one is called Bulldozer, and basically what it does is if you use it and then drive into someone, it stuns them for a bit. So yeah, it's quite useful for if someone's in front of you a bit, and then you use the bulldozer and then drive into the back of them. You can stun them for a bit and overtake them. So yeah, it's quite useful. Then the next power up is called Ice Slider. And it works sort of like the green shells from Mario Kart if you've ever played Mario Kart. But yeah, it's basically you shoot it out from the front of your cart, and if it hits someone, it stuns them. But it can also bounce off walls. So yeah, you can sometimes get some cool trick shots where it bounces off like 3 different walls and then hits someone. So yeah, it's quite fun to use, but it's also quite useful. You used to be able to hit yourself with it when it first came out, but there was like an update like a bit afterwards, like a day afterwards. So yeah, you can't hit yourself with it anymore. So yeah, it's like you can't sort of get into situations where you accidentally fire it in front of you and it bounces off a wall right in front of you and hits you again. But yeah, but in that update, it was also changed so that you could hit landmines with it. So yeah, it's quite useful for if there's a landmine in front of you and you sort of want to go like in that direction, so you can just fire an ice slider at it, and then it'll trigger the landmine so you can go over. So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. It's sort of a different way of using the ice slider. So yeah. So there's also been 4 new engines added. They're in a completely different category because before there was only top speed and handling, but now there's a new category of engine called utility. So yeah, just sort of other engines with other bonuses, not to do with like the top speed or handling stats. But yeah, the fact that there's new engines, like I think it's a really good thing. Not only because it mixes up the game a bit and it means there's new engines to use, but it also means there's more things to spend scrap on, because scrap is quite easy to get, and the only thing you can spend it on is the engines. So yeah, now there's a bit more to spend the scrap on. But yeah, the first engine is called the Trapper engine, and you get it for 500 scrap. And it means that traps are 2 times as likely from the power-ups, and also means you can get traps in first place when normally you can't get traps when you're in first place. So yeah, I guess that's useful if you like using the traps. I'm not entirely sure what traps like entails, but I think it means just the slippery oil and the landmines, because in the little tutorial thing in the Hyper Racers lobby, yeah, there's a little section which talks about traps, and yeah, there's the slippery oil and the landmine. But yeah, the next engine is called the Collector engine, and you get it for 1000 scrap, and it means that after you collect some scrap, you gain a speed boost for 1 second. So yeah, that's quite useful. You can get it for scrap when it's just sort of on the map, but also when you get it from the power-ups. So yeah, the next the next engine is called the Vampire engine, and you get it for 2000 scrap, and you get a speed boost for 1 second after hitting another player. So yeah, I guess that's quite useful for if you're good at hitting other people with traps, or yeah, or maybe if you're not always in first place, because when you're in first place, there's not really other people around you, but when you're sort of further behind, there's like you're more likely to get power-ups to like hit other people with, but also there's more people around you. So yeah, it's quite good for catching up and getting back into first place. But yeah, and the last of the new engines is called the Booster Engine, and you get it for 3,000 scrap. And it basically means that if you're using it, all the speed boosts that you receive, they'll last for 2 times as long. So yeah, that's quite useful. Um, like out of all the new engines, I'm not entirely sure which ones will be best, or in which situations. But because yeah, there's only been like a couple days after the update, so people haven't really had enough time to figure out if any of the new engines are like really useful. But yeah, maybe in the future we'll see more people using them as more people get scrap, and it'll mix up the game a bit more and make it a bit more exciting. But yeah, because yeah, at the moment a lot of people are still just using the top speed engines. And speaking of the top speed engines, the top speed stat that the different engines has been slightly changed in this week's update. So yeah, basically the amount of top speed that each bar represents in the stats of the different engines has been slightly lowered. And basically what that means is that the top speed engines will be relatively slower than before, and the handling engines will be relatively faster than before. But yeah, the top speed engines are still faster than the handling engines. Um, but yeah, it basically just balances out the game a bit more, so that the top speed engines are no longer way better than the handling engines. So yeah, it's a bit closer, and it basically just overall makes the game a bit more fun and enjoyable, and the game better overall. But what it does mean is that you can't get as faster times as you used to be able to. So yeah, just for context, like before the update, my top speed, like my fastest speed I'd ever got, the fastest time on the Neon City map was 2 minutes and 37 seconds. But after the update, the fastest time I've got is it's 2 minutes and 49 seconds. So that's like about 10 seconds difference. So it is a a noticeable difference in the speed, but it's not a massive difference. But yeah, it just overall means that the game is a bit more balanced and fair. So there's been a few more changes to Hyper Racers, but I'm not going to bother talking about them all since they're sort of smaller changes. But yeah, if you want to know all the changes, just look at the change logs. But yeah, I'm going to move on to the Chronos changes. So this week there's been 2 changes to Chronos. The first one is that at the beginning of the game, a time warp will appear at a random spot on the map. So yeah, it'll sort of mean that at the start of the game, when you're like about to drop in on the map, you'll be able to see the red cross on the map where the time warp's going to appear. So there'll most likely be multiple people landing at that spot to try and get the time warp, to try and get the good loot. And it'll mean there's sort of fights early on to try and get the good loot. And it also means there's like more ways of trying to get good loot. So yeah, overall, I think it just makes the game a bit more fun, a bit more exciting, and I think it's a really cool change. And the second change to Chronos, it isn't like a big change to do with how the game actually works, but it's just a smaller change on how the upgrade tokens are used. They still do the same job, they still upgrade an item without you needing a duplicate, but the way it works has been slightly altered. So yeah, now to use an upgrade token, you need to like punch the upgrade station with the upgrade token, and then select the item that you want to upgrade. So yeah, because it's just a bit more useful, a bit more easier, a bit easier to use. Because before it would like sometimes like upgrade an item with the upgrade token without you wanting it to, and yeah, it was just a bit more confusing before, but now it's a bit easier to use an upgrade token and a bit more straightforward. So there's a couple things that I'm going to quickly mention before the video ends. The first thing is the vault. There's 2 lights have lit up. I'm not sure what it means, but yeah, 2 lights have lit up. But I don't know whether this season is going to be like last season, where I had no idea what the lights were doing on the vault. At least in season 1, I had some idea what the vaults were going to do, like counting up. But yeah, 2 lights split up, and I'm not sure what it means. Yeah, the next thing I'm going to mention is that the requirements for influencer rank have been changed slightly. Before, the subscriber requirement was 2,000 subscribers on the main the main channel, but now it's been moved up to 3,000. But yeah, it doesn't really affect me because I got it at like 230. But yeah, that's it for this episode of Twig. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, and also if you're not already, please subscribe because it really helps me out and it also means you won't miss any future episodes of this series. So yeah, bye.